There are certain games from our childhood that, when you really think about them, are kind of unsettling by design. Take hide and seek, for example. The entire objective is to make yourself disappear, to exist silently in the dark corners of a house or the deep shadows of the woods, hoping no one finds you. But sometimes, the scariest part of the game isn't being found. It's realizing that, while you were hiding, someone else was hiding too. Here are 3 true hide-and-seek horror stories that will make you think twice before playing games in the dark. Story 1. I was 15 when this happened. It was a Friday night in late September, right when the air starts to get that sharp, cold edge to it. My parents had gone out to a dinner party with some family friends and told me they wouldn't be back until very late, meaning I had the house entirely to myself. Around 8 p.m. I invited my neighbor and best friend, Chris, over to hang out. He lived directly across the street and we practically grew up together. Usually, we'd just play video games in the basement or watch movies. But that night, we were bored and restless. At some point, Chris suggested playing hide and seek. It sounded childish at first, we were teenagers. After Albert, we had played it a few months prior, with a larger group of friends, and it had actually been pretty fun. My house wasn't huge, but it had a lot of good hiding spots. A cluttered basement, closets filled with coats, and plenty of furniture to squeeze behind. We decided to up the stakes by turning off almost every light in the house. The only illumination came from the dim stove light in the kitchen. The rules were simple: no going outside, and the attic and crawl space were off limits. Everything else was fair game. Chris volunteered to hide first. I stood in the living room, covered my eyes, and counted to 50. I could hear his footsteps thumping as he ran off. And then, silence. Ready or not, here I come, I called out, my voice echoing slightly in the quiet house. I started my search in the kitchen, checking the pantry and behind the island. Nothing. I moved to the basement door, yanking it open and peering into the dark stairwell. Silence. I moved down the hallway, checking the bathroom and the coat closet near the front door. Empty. I crept upstairs. The wooden steps creaked under my weight, and in the near-total darkness, every sound felt amplified. I checked my parents' room first, looking under their king-sized bed and behind the long dresser. No, Chris. I went to my room next. It was messy, but a quick scan of the closet and under the desk revealed nothing. That left the guest bedroom at the end of the hall. The door was cracked open just a few inches. I pushed it open slowly, half expecting Chris to jump out and scare me. But the room was still. I stepped inside, my eyes adjusting to the gloom. I checked under the bed. Dust bunnies, but no Chris. I opened the closet door. Just empty hangers. Confused, I went back downstairs. I checked the basement thoroughly this time, behind the furnace, under the stairs, behind the stacks of storage bins. Finally, I found him curled up in a tight ball, behind a pile of old cardboard boxes in the corner. He laughed, asking what took me so long. I told him he picked a good spot, and then it was my turn to hide. I ran upstairs while he counted. I decided to hide in the guest room, sliding under the bed and pulling the long bed skirt down so I was completely concealed. My heart was pounding against the floorboards as I lay there in the dusty dark. A few minutes later, I heard Chris's heavy footsteps coming up the stairs. He checked the bathroom first. I heard the door squeak. Then he walked into my parents' room. Finally, his footsteps came down the hall, toward the guest room. I held my breath. He walked into the room. I could see his shoes through the thin fabric of the bed skirt. He stopped right next to the bed. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for him to rip the skirt up and yell, "Found you," but he didn't. He stood there for a long moment. Then, he turned around and walked out of the room. I lay there, grinning to myself, thinking I had outsmarted him. I waited for him to call out that he gave up, or that he found me, but the house stayed silent. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Finally, I crawled out, dusting myself off. "Okay, you win," I yelled, walking into the hallway. "Don't answer." I went downstairs, expecting to find him watching TV or raiding the fridge. The living room was empty. The kitchen was empty. "Chris," I called out, "I'm in the basement." His voice muffled from below. I walked to the basement door and opened it. "Dude, game over." I came out. "I'm still looking for you," he yelled back. "Where the hell are you hiding?" A cold knot formed in my stomach. "I'm standing in the kitchen, Chris. I've been out for like 2 minutes." I heard him running up the basement stairs. He burst into the kitchen, looking genuinely confused. "How did you get down here without me seeing you?" he asked. "I didn't," I said. "I was under the guest bed the whole time." Chris's face went pale. "No, you weren't." I checked the guest room. I stood right next to the bed. I even checked the closet. You weren't in there. I saw your shoes, Chris. You stood next to the bed and then walked out. He shook his head, looking disturbed. I walked out because I heard breathing coming from the closet. I thought you were in there, so I opened it, but it was empty. It freaked me out, so I left the room. I stared at him. I wasn't in the closet. I was under the bed. We argued for a minute, both of us getting a little spooked, but eventually, we brushed it off as nerves and old house noises. We decided to play one more round, to shake off the weird vibe. I was the seeker again. I counted in the kitchen, trying to ignore the unsettled feeling in my gut. When I finished, I started searching. I checked the living room and the den. Nothing. I was heading toward the stairs when I heard a noise from the second floor. It sounded like a soft thump, like something heavy being set down. Chris, I called out. No answer. I went up the stairs slowly. The hallway was pitch black. I checked my room. I checked the bathroom - empty. I walked toward the guest room. The door was closed. I froze. I knew for a fact I had left it cracked open when I came downstairs earlier. I reached for the handle, my hand shaking slightly. I turned it and pushed the door open. Gotcha, I said, trying to sound confident. The room was empty. The closet door was open, just as Chris had left it. I checked under the bed. Nothing. Confused, I went back downstairs. I found Chris hiding in the laundry room behind a basket of clothes. Okay, you got me. He laughed. We decided to stop playing. We were both tired, and the atmosphere in the house had shifted. It felt heavy. We sat on the couch in the living room and turned on the TV, trying to distract ourselves. Suddenly, from directly above Usan, the guest room, there was a loud bang. We both jumped. Chris looked at me. Are your parents home? No, I whispered. They aren't back for hours. We sat in silence, listening. Sound of slow, deliberate creaking floorboards. Then we heard it, clear as day. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps, pacing back and forth in the guest room, directly above our heads. Dude, Chris whispered, his voice trembling. There's someone upstairs. I grabbed the heavy iron fireplace poker from the hearth. Stay behind me, I whispered. We crept to the bottom of the stairs. The house was dead silent again. We ascended slowly, step by step, trying not to make the old wood groan. When we reached the top landing, I looked down the hall. The guest room door was closed again. I felt like I was going to throw up. We had just been up there. We left it open. Then, from behind the closed door, came a sound that made my blood run cold. Sound of heavy fabric dragging across floor. It was a dragging sound, like something heavy and soft being pulled across the carpet. Shuck. Chris grabbed my shoulder. We need to leave now. I nodded, terrified, but a stupid, reckless part of me needed to know. I raised the poker and crept toward the door. I reached out, turned the knob, and shoved the door open violently. Get out, I screamed, swinging the poker at the air. The room was empty. The closet door was wide open. The bed skirt was lifted up on one side, but there was no one there. There's nobody here, I stammered, backing away. Let's go, Chris urged. We turned to run back downstairs, but as we reached the top step, we froze. The sound wasn't coming from upstairs anymore. It was coming from downstairs. The front door knob rattled. Then the distinct click of the latch opening. Someone's coming in, Chris hissed. No, I whispered, realizing the truth. Someone is leaving. We heard the front door open and close gently. We sprinted down the stairs and ran to the front window. Peeking through the blinds, we saw a dark figure in a hooded sweatshirt, walking calmly down my driveway and disappearing into the night. We locked every door and called the police immediately. They arrived 10 minutes later and searched the house. They found nothing missing, but in the guest room closet, they found something that made me sick to my stomach. Pushed into the far back corner, behind a row of winter coats, was a sleeping bag that didn't belong to us, and next to it were wrappers from food that had been taken from our pantry. Someone had been living in our guest room closet. When Chris heard breathing in the closet, the person was in there. When I was hiding under the bed, the person was in the closet, listening to me breathe. And when we were downstairs watching TV, they were pacing around the room, waiting for their chance to slip out. We never found out who it was, but I never played hide and seek again. Story 2. I grew up in a neighborhood that backed right up against a dense stretch of woods. It was the kind of place where the trees went on for miles, eventually merging into a state forest. When I was around 14, my friends and I spent most of our summer nights playing manhunt or hide and seek. It was mud-dogged, humid and sticky, the kind of heat that lingers long after the sun goes down. There were 5 of us that night. Me, my friend Tyler, his younger brother Matt, and two neighbors, Jason and Eric. We decided to play a massive game of hide-and-seek that spanned all of our backyards and extended about 50 yards into the tree line. The rules were standard. Stay within earshot of the seekers count. Jason volunteered to be at first. The rest of us scattered. I ran straight for the woods with Tyler. We split up once we passed the first row of oaks. I found a massive fallen log and crouched behind it, pulling my knees to my chest. I could hear Jason shouting numbers back in the yard. 49, 50, ready or not. Silence settled over the woods. The only sounds were the crickets and the occasional rustle of leaves. I stayed perfectly still. After about 5 minutes, I heard footsteps crunching through the dry leaves nearby. They were slow and rhythmic. I assumed it was Jason searching for us. I pressed myself lower against the rotting wood of the log, holding my breath. The footsteps stopped about 10 feet away from me. I waited for Jason to shout, "Found you," or for him to move on. But whoever it was just stood there. Minutes ticked by. My legs started to cramp. The silence was unnerving. I felt like I was being watched, but I couldn't see anything over the log without giving away my position. Finally, the footsteps started again, but they didn't come toward me. They walked deeper into the woods, away from the houses. I listened to the crunching fade into the distance. It struck me as odd Jason wouldn't wander that deep into the forest. It was against the rules. I peeked over the log. The woods were empty. Game over. Come out, Jason's voice echoed from the backyard. I stood up, brushing dirt off my jeans, and jogged back to the house. Everyone else was already gathered on the patio. "Man, you almost had me," I said to Jason. "You walked right past my log." Jason looked confused. "I never went into the woods," he said. "I found Tyler and Eric behind the shed, and Matt was hiding under the deck." I paused. "What?" "I heard you walking near me. You stopped right by the fallen log." "Dude, I swear," Jason said. "I didn't go past the tree line." The other guys nodded. Matt chimed in. "Yeah, he caught me like 2 minutes in." A weird feeling settled in my gut. If Jason hadn't been in the woods, who walked past me? We brushed it off, assuming it was a deer or maybe just my imagination, playing tricks on me in the dark. We played another round. This time, I was the seeker. I leaned against the side of the house and counted to 50, loud enough for everyone to hear, ready or not. I checked the usual spots behind the shed, under the deck. I found Eric almost immediately. Tyler was hiding in a bush near the driveway. That left Jason and Matt. I headed toward the woods, turning on my flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating tree trunks and swaying branches. "I know you're in here," I yelled. I scanned the area. About 20 yards in, I saw a flash of a white t-shirt behind a tree. "Gotcha, Matt," I shouted. Matt stepped out, looking defeated. "Oh man." He ran back to the yard. I kept walking, looking for Jason. I was deeper in the woods now, near the boundary of where we were allowed to go. Snap! A loud crack of a branch came from ahead of me. "Jason, come out. I heard you," I called out. No answer. Then came the footsteps. Heavy, deliberate steps crunching on the leaves. But they weren't trying to be quiet. They were walking toward me. I shined my flashlight in the direction of the sound. The beam hit nothing but trees and darkness. "Jason?" I asked, my voice wavering. The footsteps stopped abruptly. "Game over," Jason's voice yelled from behind me, back at the house. I spun around. Through the trees, I could see the porch light. I could see the silhouettes of my friends standing in the yard. Jason was already back there. My blood ran cold. I turned back to the dark woods ahead of me. Someone was standing out there, just beyond the reach of my flashlight. I backed away slowly, then turned and sprinted back to the yard. "Did you guys hear that?" I asked, breathless. "There's someone in the woods." They laughed. "Stop trying to scare us," Tyler said. "I'm serious," I insisted. I heard walking, heavy walking, and it stopped when I shined my light. Matt, the youngest of us, looked up. He was pale. I saw him too. We all stopped laughing. "What?" Jason asked. "When I was hiding behind the tree," Matt whispered, "I saw a tall man standing really still in the bushes. I thought it was your dad trying to scare us." The mood plummeted. We all looked toward the tree line. The woods were pitch black, a wall of silence. "Let's go inside," Tyler said. We went into his basement and locked the door. We didn't play outside for the rest of the night. I never played hide-and-seek in those woods again. Even now, years later, when I visit my parents and look out at that tree line, I can't shake the feeling that something is looking back. Story 3. It was a Saturday afternoon, last July. Hot and humid in rural Pennsylvania. My backyard is massive acres of open grass bordered by thick forest, with an old storage shed sitting right on the edge of the property line. I was 14 at the time. My friends, Ryan, Josh, and Adam came over to play basketball in my driveway. We played for hours until we were exhausted, collapsing onto the grass to chug water. While we were sitting there catching our breath, we saw someone walking up the long dirt road that runs past my house. It was a kid we didn't recognize. He looked older than us, maybe 16 or 17. He had messy black hair and was wearing a gray t-shirt and jeans, which seemed weird given the 90-degree heat. He walked right up to us like he knew us. "Hey," he said. His voice was flat. "Need an extra player?" We all exchanged glances. We lived in a small town where everyone knew everyone. None of us had ever seen this guy before. Adam asked. "I'm Keith," the kid said. "I live up the road. Just moved in." It seemed plausible enough. "We're actually done playing," I said. "We're pretty tired." Keith nodded, looking around my yard. His eyes lingered on the shed and the woods. "You guys play manhunt?" he asked. This yard would be perfect for it. It was a weird thing to suggest immediately, but manhunt was our favorite game, and honestly, having an extra person made the teams even. "Sure," Ryan said. "Why not?" We split into teams. Keith volunteered to be a seeker first, along with Adam and Josh. That left me, Ryan, and Ben to hide. "Go," Adam yelled, kicking a soccer ball to start the countdown. I sprinted toward the back of the property. I didn't want to go into the woods yet, so I headed for the old shed. It was a risky spot because it was obvious, but I figured I could hide under the old tops in the corner. I slipped inside the shed. It smelled like gasoline and mildew. I crawled under a heavy blue top and lay perfectly still. I waited. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I started to get bored. Usually, the seekers checked the shed first. Suddenly, the shed door creaked open. I held my breath. I could hear soft footsteps on the wooden floorboards. They stopped right next to me. Gotch whooshed out the top was ripped off me. I looked up, expecting to see Keith or Adam. It was Adam. "Gotcha." He grinned. I sighed and walked back to the patio, which served as jail. Ben was already there. A few minutes later, Josh came back with Ryan. We all stood around drinking Gatorade, waiting for the next round. "Where's Keith?" Josh asked. We looked around. The yard was empty. "I haven't seen him since the game started," Adam said. We split up immediately. We waited. 10 minutes went by. Then 20. "Maybe he went home," Ryan suggested. Without saying anything, I asked. It was weird. We walked down the driveway to check the road, but it was empty. Keith had just vanished. My friends eventually went home around sunset. I went inside, feeling unsettled. As I walked into my bedroom, I noticed something lying on the floor near my window. It was a piece of rope, just a dirty, frayed length of rope, maybe 3 feet long. I stared at it. That rope hadn't been there earlier. I picked it up. It felt gritty. My stomach dropped. I realized my bedroom window was unlocked. My dad often left the side door to the garage unlocked during the day too. Could Keith have come inside while we were playing? I tossed the rope in the trash and tried to forget about it. I told myself I probably tracked it in on my shoe. I went to bed around 11 p.m. I was lying there, scrolling on my phone, when I heard it. Sound of soft footsteps on carpet footsteps in the hallway, just outside my bedroom door. My dad is a big guy. When he walks, the floorboards groan. These steps were light. "Sneaky. Dad," I called out. Silence. The footsteps stopped right in front of my door. My heart hammered against my ribs. I got up quietly and locked my bedroom door. I stood there, staring at the handle. Slowly, the knob began to turn. It jiggled back and forth, hitting the lock mechanism. Click-clack, click-clack. Then silence. A moment later, I heard the distinct sound of the front door opening and closing downstairs. I sprinted to my parents' room and woke my dad up. "Someone was in the house," I whispered frantically. He didn't question me. He grabbed a shotgun from the closet, and we searched the entire house. Every room, every closet, the basement. We found nothing. No Keith. No intruder. But when we checked the kitchen, we found the back door unlocked. The next day, I asked around about a new kid named Keith. No one knew who I was talking about. There were no new families up the road. I told my friends what happened. They were freaked out, but Ryan mentioned something that made it worse. When we were picking teams, Ryan said, "Keith asked me if anyone was home at your house. I thought he was just making conversation, so I told him your parents were at work." I realized then that the game of manhunt was never about playing. It was about distraction. While we were running around the yard, Keith had slipped inside my house. He had been in there for hours, hiding, waiting. And that rope I found in my room. I don't think I tracked it in. I think he dropped it. I never saw Keith again, but I keep my windows locked now. Because the scariest thought isn't that he was in my house. It's wondering what he planned to use that rope for.
Think you're brave enough to handle what comes next? Prove it. Hit subscribe to Nightmare right now. Let's see how long you last.